Greetings. My name is Ben Williams. I'm an assistant professor of Hinduism and Yoga Studies at Naropa University, and I'm delighted to be teaching this course, Yogic Studies 129, Abhinavagupta, The Art of Nonduality. Abhinavagupta flourished between the 10th and 11th centuries of the Common Era. He was a great teacher, a Shaiva teacher who lived in the Vale of Kashmir, encircled by the fortress-like mountains of the Himalayas. And he lived there during a time that is arguably one of the most creative periods of cultural production in Indian history. In the non-dual Shaiva traditions that flourished in Kashmir, Abhinavagupta is revered as a Siddha, not just a Muni or sage who is free of suffering or who has transcended this world, a Siddha, a rare being whose mind, body, and breath have become consecrated into vessels of revelatory knowledge. But in the Siddha traditions from which Abhinavagupta hails, and in parallel Siddha traditions in Indian esoteric Buddhism, there are no masters whose intellectual versatility and expertise in classical Indian arts reach such great heights. In this course, we're going to first encounter Abhinavagupta through his own autobiographical passages. These are conclusions to his text where he speaks about his family lineage, the teachers and traditions he studied, the exact circumstances in which he became a guru, a Shaiva Tantric teacher and master, and even he discusses the excellences and the qualifications of his own disciples, his own students. And this will lead to a deep dive into this period of time in Kashmir. It's a moment of a great cultural efflorescence, and it's a region to which Abhinavagupta pays tribute as his home in beautiful poetic verses. We're then going to look at Abhinavagupta as a tantric scholastic and also as a tantric visionary. We'll look at his magnum opus, the Tantraloka, the Light on Tantras, and we'll consider it as a grand project, a sprawling compendium of tantric theory and practice, which is devoted to the Trika tradition, the Shakta tradition, centered on three goddesses. We'll then turn to Abhinavagupta, the philosopher. We'll look at a number of his different commentaries where he's articulating and defending and expressing this non-dual Shaiva philosophy called Pratyabhijna, the philosophy of recognition. And we'll conclude the course by considering his contributions as a theorist of poetry, Indian theater, and also music. And this involves looking at Abhinavagupta's aesthetic intelligences, his deep receptivity to literary and performance art, but also how this informs his worldview, his broader cosmology. And this results in what I'll call an aesthetic non-duality. I'm really looking forward to this concluding part because I hope to bring together all of these different strands from his spiritual writing to his philosophy to his works on the meaning and embodiment of beauty. My own interest in Shaiva Tantric traditions goes back to my undergraduate days at the University of Vermont. While I was there, I studied with a scholar of Tibetan Buddhism and Indian Buddhist philosophy, Jonathan Gold. And one day in Jonathan's office, he asked me, as professors do, what my interests were. And I remember saying at that time, I'm interested in Kashmir Shaivism. And Jonathan Gold received that. And suddenly there was this stillness in the room. And he said, Abhinavagupta. I had heard of Abhinavagupta. I knew he was a great exemplar of this tradition, but I didn't really know much about him. But there was a way he said this. The way he said that name struck a chord. And so I began to study him in more depth. I went on to complete a BA on Abhinavagupta. I wrote an MA thesis on his student Kshamaraja. And my PhD dissertation looked at how Abhinavagupta represented himself as a tantric guru. And it involved a deep look at revelation and religious authority and the traditions that he transmitted. And so now it's been about 7 years since completing that dissertation, and I've not stopped reading Abhinava. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful to Yogic Studies because in this course, I'm going to be able to synthesize my understanding of the last 20 years of studying this extraordinary figure. And in that process of approaching his mind, I'm not going to lie, in many ways, Abhinavagupta has been intimidating. To try to understand him has been daunting. And Jonathan Gold, my professor at UVM, he actually worked on another great intellectual of the Tibetan tradition, Sakya Pandita. And right when I was meeting with him, his book had just come out called The Dharma's Gatekeepers. And in it, he says, Sapan's picture of himself as the ideal, hyper-refined scholar is not intended to intimidate, but to inspire faith and confidence in the reader. Even though his scholarly achievements are masterful, perhaps even perfect, he does not set himself beyond the reach of the aspiring student. The only reason, he says, others are incapable of achieving great knowledge is that they are not willing to exert themselves. This is something I realized in my own studies of Abhinavagupta, and it's an insight that I love. The point is not to be intimidated by Abhinavagupta's towering intellectual mastery. The more I exerted myself in this endeavor, the more I grappled with the technicality of Indian philosophy, literary theory, tantric esoterica, the more I understood Abhinavagupta's teachings, the entire movement of his work, as an invitation. His ideas are not artifacts of a great mind to appreciate in posterity, but more the sparks of mind as such that invite us to connect with our own passion to learn, to know, to understand, to clarify, to synthesize, and to see broader and broader horizons. And when it comes to art, again, the point is not just to appreciate Abhinavagupta's taste and his aesthetic sensitivity. It's really an invitation for us to discover our own capacity to savor the beauty of life. Abhinavagupta sees his own inexhaustible enthusiasm for philosophical, artistic, and spiritual knowledge as a gift of grace. And when we engage with him, it's my experience that we begin to experience that grace through osmosis. And so this is something we can learn from him. And in conclusion, I just want to say, one of the ways I think about Abhinavagupta is a philosopher of the future. As I see it, in many ways, the world has yet to catch up with some of his deepest intuitions. And so the goal of this course is not simply to gain an understanding of Abhinavagupta from afar, but to receive and wrestle with his vision as a living resource for how we can think about the meaning and potential of human life, life in general, and the cosmos at large. Thank you very much.